Welcome to the Globetrottin ADs. This podcast is for you, athletic directors, activity coordinators, coaches, and program associates based in international schools around the world. The Globetrottin ADs is proudly hosted by Nick DeForest from the American International School Vienna and Matt Fleming from the American International School of Budapest. Here they are now, Nick and Matt and the Globetrottin ADs.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Globetrottin ADs. This week we have a special guest. We have Wallace Ting, who is a former international school teacher, coach, and also a school director. Wallace is the co-founder of School Rubric. School Rubric is a registered nonprofit organization that provides a variety of resources, content pieces such as articles, professional development webinars, educational podcast features, interviews, and panel discussions. A great resource out there for the international community. You can learn more at schoolrubric.com. So we're really excited to have Wallace on our program today. Before we do that, though, I'm going to throw it over to my partner in crime in Vienna, down in the basement, Nick DeForest.
Hey, everybody. Yes. Yeah, thanks, Matt. I am in my basement on a staycation here, spring break for both of us, but some very different settings for our spring break, Matt. Tell everybody where you are.
Well, yes, I am in a more traditional type spring break environment. I am currently in Florida, so not my usual location there in Nagykovács,
Wow.
Hungary, just outside of Budapest.
Matt, I would not have thought you would be one of those spring breakers to go down there and party and burn masks. I mean, tell us it's not true.
No, that's incorrect. I'm here on a relax mode. I'm actually here on a mission. I'm on a mission of sorts, but enjoying the environment in the meantime. So, yeah, we're in a precarious situation where the rollout of the vaccines in Hungary for expats, the folks at our school, the foreigners, it hasn't been a quick a quick rollout of the vaccine. So we were given the option we could go back to the States if we wanted to get the vaccine. So my family, we opted for that. So we've come to Florida first. I'm fortunate to have a place I can go to. My mother's down here. And so we're enjoying the sun. Went to Walmart on Tuesday and got our first Pfizer vaccine. So it was great.
Yeah.
It worked out really smoothly, very easily. Just had to get a PCR test to get out of Europe, to get into the US. And here we are.
I thought you were going to tell us all what you bought at Walmart, but no, you got the vaccine at Walmart.
Vaccine was first, and then I did my shopping.
Okay.
Yes, all my supplies I need to take back.
Well, I mean, I really am jealous because, yeah, we're on spring break, so I don't have to do much schoolwork, but everything's closed. Hard lockdown, no stores, so can't do anything but shopping.
Yeah.
Enjoy the outside. We've been around. My wife's off, so we're enjoying as best we can, doing some things, but sure would rather be on a beach in Florida, Matt.
Yeah, it was a good move. I did it also. My kids need a break. My kids are in high school. They've been on distance learning since November, so they've been stuck in the house for quite a while. So about a week ago, I just decided, like, you guys want to go to Florida? And they were like, yeah. So we put the wheels in motion, and with the blessing of the school, we booked everything, and here we are.
All right, great.
Happy to be back. Now we'll head back in 3 weeks after we have our second vaccines.
Okay, so we'll get another podcast while you're stateside in.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Just not too early.
No. All right. Well, hey, let's get in it. We'll we're excited to have Wallace on. I interact and talk with Wallace quite a bit because of Global Take. So we'll talk about Global Take and international teaching in a whole. So, yeah, let's go to a quick commercial, and then we'll come back with Wallace.
Coach Evaluator is the premier coach evaluation software for schools and athletic organizations and preferred coach evaluation solution of the NIAAA and the Positive Coaching Alliance. The system is completely customizable with an always growing evaluation template library for athletic directors to reference. There are not only evaluations for ADs to use, but also self-evaluations and parent-player evaluations of coaches. Learn more about digitizing and simplifying your coach evaluation process by visiting www.coachevaluator.com. Mention Globetrottin ADs to receive a $200 discount on the yearly rate.
Kukri are a global multi-sport clothing brand specializing in providing the world's most prestigious schools with bespoke made and designed team uniforms for students of all standards and abilities. If you are frustrated by inconsistent colors, branding, costs, and sizing across your school's uniforms, then it's time to discuss an offering where every sport is available from softball to soccer for male and female athletes at rates to suit your budget. To find out how Kukri could elevate the apparel of your student athletes to a professional level, email the team at contact@kukrisports.com. A dedicated sales manager will offer you a quote today. Mention this ad and receive a special offer on your coach or PE staff order. Okay, Wallace, so hey, tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. Well, been in education, I think almost about 20 years, and I actually never really wanted to be an educator. And I majored in electrical engineering, grew up in a math and science family, and 9/11 happened. It's really interesting. So at the time I was dating my high school girlfriend, and she was studying at UPenn, and I wanted to spend a summer with her. And I was between my junior and senior year of university majoring in electrical engineering. And the only job I could find was one where I was working as a summer camp teacher / tutor, earning $5 an hour in Chinatown in Philadelphia for these immigrant kids. And I tell you what, Nick and Matt, I had the time of my life, right? And I just made such a connection with those kids in that community. And at the end of the summer, we went to New York City to visit. And, you know, I don't know if you guys but I grew up in Carrollton, Texas, which is just north of Dallas, and a very small suburban community. So, yeah, I mean, this kid who grew up in Texas, not really understanding much about the world, you know, you can imagine what it was like going to New York City and feeling the energy of the city and everything that transpired over the course of the summer. And I remember visiting the World Trade Center on September 1st, 2001. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't there for 9/11, but that was only 10 days before. And when I went back to university, boy, 9/11 happened. And that kind of just set off a chain reaction in me where I was just like, am I doing the right thing with my life? Mm-hmm. And maybe I need to do something different. And just kind of fresh off of that experience working with kids, that's why I kind of recommitted to myself, well, maybe I need to get into a career in education.
So did you switch out? Did you change your major and go into education from there? Or did you finish out your engineering degree?
Yeah, so I was into my senior year. I was in my senior year of electrical engineering. So I finished my degree. And during Saturdays, I would drive up 3 hours from Austin to Dallas, did an alternative certification program. In my very first year, I got hired as a math teacher because there's obviously a need for math teachers. And I got hired in the school in which I was a student. And so that was my first year teaching. I taught 6th grade and 8th grade math.
Great. That's a great story. So, you know, not just the 9/11 bit about it, but just the fact that your eyes were open in a different way once you make those connections, right? When you make those connections with kids and you see the change that you can make and the positive impact, it's just a great story. That's a great story. I didn't know that. So thanks for sharing about that, Wallace.
Yeah, sure.
And well, what brought you overseas then? Because there you're basically at home, you know, in Texas. And
yeah, well, it's interesting. So after Texas, I taught for a year, and I spent after teaching for about, around Thanksgiving of my very first year of teaching, I used a little money that I made on my, first year public school teacher salary and ended up going to New York City. And there I felt like, I visited Ground Zero. I took a tour of Yankee Stadium as an example, and just did some other things. Went to a couple of comedy clubs and all the things that one wants to do in New York that I didn't have the opportunity to do the first time around. And I saw I saw in the subway there was a sign, and it was in the sign there was one of the advertisement. It said, every child remembers their first grade teacher. Who will remember yours? Join the New York City Teaching Fellows. And I was like, that's what I need to do right now, right? I need to go to New York City right now, and I need to apply to this program, and I need to work in the New York City public schools, and I need to change the world. That's basically what it was. And so I applied, and I spent 6 years teaching in public schools in New York City. But to answer your question, Nick, how I got into international schools, by the end of 6 years, I tell you what, I was pretty burned out by working in public education. I was pretty burned out in working in New York City, pretty burned out with just not feeling like I was really making a dent in anywhere outside of my classroom. I remember, as an example, I was teaching remedial algebra, right? And in a non-air conditioned room to like 45 kids, right? And I would tell my assistant principal, I'd just be like, look, I majored in electrical engineering. Let me teach one honors pre-calc course. Let me teach one AP calculus course. I'll teach the remedial algebra. I'll teach that, no problem. And she said, Wallace, I'd love to do that, but in New York City, it's all about seniority, right? So the people who have the most seniority per union rules, they get to express their preferences, and we have to assign those, right? And I said, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was just like, okay, I need to look for some other opportunities. So anyway, one summer I went to Peru. I like playing tennis, and I spent the summer playing tennis in Peru, just because I heard it was cheap, the weather was good, it's got a tennis culture. In the States, they don't, there's not a lot of clay courts. Mm-hmm. So anyway, went to Peru, spent a summer there, and I just was just like, how could I do this like 365 days a year, right? Like, I spent so little money over the summer, had a great time, went out and partied, met some interesting people, was playing tennis every day, in the greatest shape of my life. And I was like, I've got to figure out how in the world to do this full time. And that's how I stumbled into international teaching.
Yeah. That's a great process story, because, you went to these trials. And I think in New York, you can get a lifetime teaching certificate as well, right?
I was in the cohort that was the last cohort that was the lifetime certification. Okay. So yes, my New York City teaching or my New York certification is still lifetime. Yep.
So I think that makes it a little harder to even move around, in the system. I think if you're, it's not just the tenure bit, but those people are never going to leave, right? So it's hard to make a move unless those people move on somehow. So kudos to you for that light bulb going off and getting out of there and making a good move.
Yeah, and I just think it's one of those things. It's I just think some of the systems there, in terms of, and that's not to say international school is perfect either, but I just think some of the systems there that I just kind of confronted in terms of the unionization. I mean, certainly the unionization and tenure protects a lot of teachers, but at the same time, I think it's very harmful to kind of what teachers are doing and kind of having the best people in the best positions that are the best qualified to serve our students. And I saw that with my own eyes over 6 years in New York City. And I think that's true in many other public school institutions. And so for me, it was just kind of a call to, I don't need to be there anymore. I've started school.
I also taught in some inner city schools in Ohio for about 7-8 years. So I'm familiar with that background you're talking about of the union. The union was great. It was good to be a part of it, but it could also make things very political and divided within a school building, which is not good, especially I think in an inner city type of setting, which can't be good for building culture inside an actual school building, and it can make it tough.
But you know what, Matt? One of the things I'll share, because I know you guys have a lot of folks who work in international schools. So one of that experience that I've just shared really informed what some of my thinking when I became an administrator, right? Because I can tell you, when I went from the U.S. New York City public school system to the international school system, and my first job was at Colegio Jorge Washington in Cartagena, Colombia. And I was just like, my God, this is paradise, right? I was just like, what, there's 20 kids in my class? I only have 2 preps? Wait a second, like the kids are there like every day and there's not like any truancy? Like, wait a second, if I call the parents, they're going to like pick up their phone and they're going to respond. What's happening here? And they pay for my housing and all this kind of other stuff. It was just like, I was blown away.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I always really tried to do is get a good mixture of teachers. But one of the kind of demographics that I always tried to target were teachers that had worked in kind of public school, more urban, maybe even rural, but disadvantaged communities in the States, because I knew that if I recruited them and I brought them over to international schools, they would have a similar reaction and just be like, wow, this is amazing. And if I got that, wow, this is amazing kind of attitude or reaction, I knew that they were going to likely do a great job in those schools.
That's a game changer. It's a whole new view, perspective of the world and things you can do. And, you get that feeling like everything you're doing in your job and working with kids and programming, you just feel like you're hitting home runs all the time. And it's a great feeling, so to speak. Speaking of sports, Nick, you got some sports questions for.
Yeah, well, ADs, right? We're ADs. We want to talk about global take and things like that in a second. But also, Wallace, when you were overseas, what was your relationship to your AD in the few schools you're at? What was it like for you working together with an AD and your background on sports? You mentioned going to a Yankees game or touring the stadium, so you must be into sports a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think it's evolved a lot over time. I'll share that I never, I played sports as a kid, but I was never like hugely into sports. Mm-hmm. And I got into coaching when I was in New York City. But then when I was a teacher overseas, I never had the opportunity to coach. And not because I didn't want to, just because there wasn't that opportunity to be a coach. But I think athletics is really important. I think the role of the athletic director in international schools is really important. And I think there's such an opportunity there, right? Because not only do you have the opportunity to compete with kind of schools locally in the area and kind of set up some leagues, I think you're also looked as the international school as a leader, right? And then I think the other thing is, of course, traveling within kind of these regional international school communities and, having kids being able to travel and being able to compete. I remember when we were in Africa, we were part of WISL, right, which is part of the West African International School League. And that was fun. I mean, that was a kick. A lot of schools, our kids just loved it. And so I guess what is that to say is my kind of perception in international schools of directors is kind of threefold. Number one, I think that we have a responsibility as international schools to kind of be the convener and the leader in many cases in our local communities, and to also create leaders within the local communities, right? Number two, obviously interact with other international schools in the region to be able to compete in events. But I think number three is also kind of, be the uniter of the school community, right? Because in many international schools, athletic directors are the ones that actually interact with all kids from pre-K to 12, right? And there's few kind of teachers or few educators within an international school that have that exposure. Music teacher might be one of them, technology teacher perhaps. But really the athletic director is kind of one of the people, if the only one, that interacts with everyone. And so as a result of being able to interact with all the kids, then they can be like the uniter of school community, school culture, and then of course, with the faculty.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that's how I feel. Sometimes I feel like I'm the ambassador of the school because I can cross over quite a bit of different areas in the school, and I love it. It's suitable to my personality, I think, but making those connections is always great, and they're always, for the most part, pretty positive outcomes in all the dealings. So I think that's an important aspect to bring up, and I'm missing that quite a bit, to be honest with you, because we're not doing it these days, and and I'm hoping I'm not losing my skills because I'm not having a chance to practice them and keep them sharp. But we got to get back to that as soon as we can.
And I know that like knowing the work of the both of you guys and what you do, I think that's just so important, right? Just being able to kind of with community and culture. And I think it's really easy to kind of be like, well, you're just the athletic director, so deal with the PE classes and let me close my eyes and let me worry about map testing and let me worry about, student enrollment and let me worry about, university admissions and all the things that I think traditionally that international school directors kind of emphasize and pay importance to. But for me, I would kind of look to the athletic director in addition to all of those things. And I would say, you know what? It's important for us to develop community. It's within our faculty. It's important for faculty well-being, faculty wellness, faculty mental health, but also kind of, galvanizing the community together. And what better person to do that than the athletic or activities director?
Right. I really feel that and appreciate the comments, because you do know everybody. And, you hear teachers, I'm just in my little corner. I don't get out of the math department, or I don't get out of this, where we can really enjoy and build that school community across the board, right? And in addition, I always thought we were the marketing department of our schools before we ever had marketing departments, because we were sending teams out, right, to other schools. And
That's right.
How those teams looked and acted when they were out really reflects back on your school, right? So you're talking about teachers changing schools, every couple of years. That was really important.
Yeah, Nick, that's interesting too, because, traditionally international schools haven't had to compete. And I mean that from a marketing perspective, right? It always used to kind of be the International School of X or the American School of Y. And those schools were kind of like the only game in town, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changing. And, we could have another show or an episode and we could talk about that a little bit further. But to your point, you're right. We talked about that a lot when our kids went to travel in Weissel. We said, hey, look, you're representing AIS Abuja. You're representing our school. You're representing our community, our mission, our values. And so it's important that you carry that with distinction. So not only do we expect you to kind of exhibit appropriate behavior, but we expect you to kind of, represent our school well. And that was always an important emphasis for us. And we would always have like a little powwow, in the lobby before the bus went to the airport. Yeah. And I'd go out there as the director, but we'd also have the principal there and our AD is there, and we'd have a little pep talk. And I always thought those things were really helpful.
Yeah, you said that at our school. I remember when my boss wanted to start doing those, when Andy, he wanted to go out and meet every bus. And I thought, oh, come on, we got enough to do. We're hosting a tournament. We're sending 5 other teams out. And he's like, no, it is important. We want to go down and just wish him well and give him a few. Doesn't have to be long, but yeah, give him exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and the converse is true too. Like, we never had the opportunity to host just because of some of the travel restrictions placed by the U.S. Embassy. Although we would have loved to, and I understand that, the school now is hosting, but, even when we ran local stuff and we had schools over, that's something that was important to me, right? That I was out there, I was shaking hands, I was interacting with folks, and, I would say a few words. I didn't think I needed to say a lot, but I would say a few things, because I think that shows, hey, look, we're welcoming you. We're a part of this. It's not just, hey, athletics, go do your thing and have fun, but everyone from the school community, from the director on down, is supporting and aware and wants to be a part of this.
Great.
Awesome. Great blue points. Good. All right. So we'll move on now. We're going to talk about a little bit about Global Take. Mm-hmm. That's what we have on the next on the agenda. So your thoughts about Global Take so far, the growth of the show, the audience, the potential. I've had a chance to be on it a couple of times. I know Nick's been doing some producing for it and been on it as well. So what do you think so far?
Yeah, well, good questions. I did think, to tie it back to the previous question about how ADs are kind of intertwined in almost a lot of aspects of the school and know the entire school community. I don't think Global Take could be or would be where it is today without it basically starting off as a show with ADs, right? Mm-hmm. How easy would it have been if, we had gotten a bunch of high school math teachers teaching internationally to start something with Global Take? I don't think it would kind of be the same flavor. I don't think it would have the same reach as it's having today. The fact that it started off with athletic directors, still continues to have that as a pillar, and then now is branching off to other aspects of international education, I think is really what's really exciting to me. And I think there's a lot of real potential there, right? Because I think one of the things I think is most exciting for me about the show is not just elevating the practice of ADs. I think that's important, and I think that should be a goal of the show, and that's what I feel when I watch the show. But I think the other thing that I think Global Take is going to be able to go to is, we talk about international teaching, and we talk about it with such passion and vigor and enthusiasm. But guess what? Half of the people back home that we talk about international teaching to are like, what is international teaching? What's international education? They don't have a clue, right? And I think Global Take is an opportunity for us to increase that pie, right? Because ultimately we want, international school is not for everyone, but we want people who are attracted to international schools to know about it and have the opportunity to participate, A, and then B, even if they aren't into international schools, they'll know what it is so that there will be more opportunities for international schools to collaborate with schools and with organizations in the US and Canada and elsewhere.
What do you think about the format of the show? And, we're doing a podcast right now, and obviously podcasts are huge around the world. To me, it's something about the video and the production and the comments that just blows everything else out there out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a coolness factor with Global Take, right? Well, I think first of all, I think the hosts are cool, right? I mean, we got you there, we got Ryan there, so we got a couple of cool guys who are just very eloquent and very well rehearsed and well spoken. But yeah, I mean, it's like really far out to me to think about. Boy, we've got 4 people from different corners of the earth, different schools, different time zones, and like just talking about education in international schools. Like, that's amazing to me, right? To think about, like, I don't think 10 years ago, if you told me that something like that had happened, I was just been like, no way. What are you talking about? Yeah, that'll happen in the year 3000. Yeah. It's happening in the year 2021. And I think that's really cool. And I think, you talk a little bit about production value, right? I think just a lot of the things with kind of like the introduction, even the countdown timer and like the collage of international schools, kind of the questions, right? It's not just about the panelists that we have, it's about the questions that we get, again, from people all over the world. Like, I just kind of look at that and I'm just like, wow, that the production value is there. And in my view, that elevates educators to the level that I think we need to be elevating educators, right? It's not, no, we're getting on a boring Zoom webinar and we're talking. This is an experience. This is a show. We want you to feel proud to be representing yourself and your school. And so we want that production value to be there. And I think it's reflected in what you guys are doing with Global Take.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I see that from the people that come on, you're not just chatting about stuff on the cuff, you're really thinking about it, thinking hard about, the answers and how it relates and try to better yourself.
And I'm curious, guys, I know I shared some of my things, and I'm not in the international school community anymore, although I interact with a lot of people in the international school community. I've definitely received some very positive comments. I'm curious to know, you guys are living it. You guys are in it, right? What kind of comments and feedback are you guys getting? I'm curious to know that too.
About the production value mostly, and getting these topics that we talk about in our AD meetings, or maybe afterwards at the bar, out there to a higher level, and then for other people to hear. Because sometimes we feel like it's just the ADs talking and kind of pushed to the side, and no, we have really academic conversations about all the stuff we're doing. And I think that's one of the main things, at least from the athletic side, athletic shows.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know where else you're going to get this kind of content, or this kind of, these open forums like this, where you're going to have people talking about international school topics that we're interested and will be interesting for folks who are working or might not have an idea what to do about it. So I think that's what's good about it too. It's exposing these topics, and it's great conversations. And I think it's broadening the audience, especially for those who might not know about international education. So it's providing an opportunity for them to learn about what's happening in international schools.
And you know what? I there's 2 things about the show that, I would add there that I really like. Number one is kind of these school spotlights. I watched that episode. I think it was your colleague. It was Jim Ellis, who did School Spotlight of Vienna. And I just remember my reaction after that was like, I want to go to Vienna now, right? Like, he painted such a great picture of Vienna. And I think a lot of times in international schools, guess what happens? We go to these job fairs, I think traditionally, right? I think, there's some evolution that's happening here, but we go to these job fairs, and, where are these job fairs? Boston, Cambridge, Iowa, right? And we meet with these international school directors, and of course they do the best they can to communicate and share with us what these schools are all about, right? But you kind of have to make a decision right there. But guess what? I now know about AIS Vienna. I heard from a teacher. I heard about someone who's been there. I've heard about some of the initiatives. I saw some pictures. And boy, I feel like that 2-minute segment gave me more information about wanting to be there than meeting with a director in a hotel room and having a 30-minute interview, right? So I think that's something that Global Take is providing to the international school community that brings tremendous value. And I think the other thing that I would say about Global Take is like, it's a take, right? It's just like kind of like, that sports show, First Take. I think what makes that first take so interesting and captivating to people is because you put something out there and there are, in fact, very different opinions, right? I recall the show about virtual competitions. Are they here to stay? Well, some people said they are here to stay. Some people said they're not here to stay. Some people said, well, they're here to stay for certain things. They're not here to stay for other things. And I think having that take is very important, and having different perspectives and opinions that don't necessarily agree, but to have a robust dialogue about it. I think that's what the show is about.
So I have a question in regards to, having Global Take as a resource, obviously for somebody who's thinking about going overseas. And we've talked about that. It's been a topic on one of the episodes. And knowing what you know and your experiences, what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about going overseas or using these resources?
Yeah, and again, I would say, you want to know where you want to go, right? So you want to set some career goals and some personal goals for yourself. And I do think that you can't really set those goals related to international education unless you understand international education. I mean, there's so much nuance to international education, isn't there? From the recruitment to the different levels of schools, to the different types of schools, IB, AP, what the role of the athletic director is, what the role of the director is, accreditation, certification, all these different things, right? And so it would be difficult for me. And that's kind of what I ran into. I was just kind of playing it by ear when I went into international schools, not understanding the ecosystem, right? And yeah, exactly. So I do think that a show like Global Take, even the Globetrottin ADs that we're talking about today, I think these things are like really helpful. If I was thinking about international education, just by listening to a few episodes, just by tuning in, I'd be like, I'm beginning to get it. I'm beginning to get what international school is all about. I'm beginning so I can start articulating, okay, where is it that I want to go? What is it that I want to do? How long do I want to do it? Because people in international schools, you have a lot of different classifications, right? Yeah. You've got the 2 and done. I was going to go out and do my thing, and then I've got people like Nick, who's been one and done, or not one and forever, right? Right. But then you have the international school teacher that does 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, and just goes to 20 different places through the course of their career, and there's nothing wrong with any of them, but I think most people that kind of stumble into those things did it by accident, not with intention. And I think the more intention that we can have with it, the better. And how do we develop that intention? Through great resources like Global Take and through the Globetrottin ADs podcast.
That's a great take. Thank you, Wallace. And I think ultimately too, it's about, taking that leap of faith, right? Knowing all your resources, doing all your homework, asking all the good questions. But in the end, it's got to be about just getting out there and taking that chance to go out into the world.
Yeah, and I can tell you, as an international school director, one of the things that frustrated me the most is when somebody would come and do an interview with me, and it was clear that they hadn't done any research into the school, into the country, into the community, into the organization, right? And I was just turned off very, very quickly. I'm just like, why are we even talking? Right? Are you just doing this to fill up an interview slot here at the job fair? Because I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff to do. But I can also tell you, kind of on the other hand, I was blown away when people are like, hey, I know a teacher that was at your school, or I know somebody that knows somebody and I talked to them, right? Or I went on your website, I looked at your mission and vision, or I looked at some of their programs and all of those different things. And it was just like, wow, you really want to be here, don't you? You really have done your research. And I do think that that research was very, very difficult 10, 15, 20 years ago to research international schools. I still think it's difficult now, but I think it is becoming easier. And again, I think, Globetrottin ADs and Global Take are two great resources to help that research process.
Yeah, people are getting exposed to it, and they're out there and they're finding out about us as much as possible.
Well, Wallace, you and I interact often, right? Whether WhatsApp calls like this,
right.
Obviously Global Take and the Facebook group and some other things. And for me, it's been like that with different people around the world since the pandemic hit. I'm meeting all sorts of new people, and I only know them through a window, a little bit. Like, obviously, I know your office there quite well. My basement. For you in the position you're in at School Rubric, you have to have met so many people in the last month. What's it like for you to meet and get to know all these people without never having seen them in person?
Yeah. So certainly, I feel like I know you guys well, and obviously, Nick, we interact a lot. And I do feel like, from the comfort of my home and through Zoom and through these other mediums, Facebook groups, all the things that you'd mentioned, I am able to meet a lot of people and develop some pretty deep relationships with them. Having said that, do I hope to be able to go to Vienna one time and be able to have a beer with you guys? I saw that picture, for example. Wasn't that picture at like some sort of beer place in Vienna, right? Where you guys were like having a beer together? Like I was, like when I saw that video, I was just like, nothing would make me happier to go there and have a beer with Matt, Nick, right? Nick, I think you told me the other day that, you have some family in the Florida area in Tampa, which is just a short drive from where I am. Right. So like, it would be awesome to be able to meet up and have a beer and hang out, right? But those things aren't really necessarily feasible or possible right now, right? So I just think, it's like the same thing. Like, I think we can have the best of both worlds. And I think that the pandemic and as a result of everyone kind of moving into these virtual platforms has provided a great opportunity for us to connect with people that we wouldn't have normally connected with. Mm-hmm. I do think that there are a lot of people that I want to now meet in person and deepen my relationship with. But at the same time, I still want to continue to doing this virtual thing and connecting with people that never would have otherwise had the chance to connect with.
Yeah, it's like having a lot of pen pals nowadays.
Yeah, and I think so. But I think, like the fact that not only communication has gotten better, but also collaboration has gotten better, sure. Right? So it's not just about, like, Nick, if you and I were just friends and, wanted to keep in touch with each other and write each other occasionally, that would be great. But guess what? We're able to kind of keep in touch with each other, share some things about our personal lives and share things about our lives. But guess what? In the context of, let's collaborate on an article. Let's collaborate on a content piece. Let's make a connection with other people that that might be helpful to what I'm doing, or that I know that might be helpful to what you're doing, right? And I think in the context of, that type of collaboration, I think it makes it very, very worthwhile and very, very deep.
Great.
Yep. All right, Wallace. Well, thanks very much for joining us today. I know you're pretty busy, and we appreciate taking time out to meet with us and sharing these topics and sharing more about the wonderful world of international education.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Until next week, this has been another episode of the Globetrottin ADs.